so my dissertation is called Jazz in the Pews, Experiments in Sunday Worship in the Late 1960s, and it centers on two composers and two communities in New York that in the late 60s started jazz ministry programs. One of them you might know. If you're a jazz fan, you might have heard of St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Midtown Manhattan that's had a weekly jazz vespers since 1965. And the other one is a now defunct Black Catholic community in Harlem called St. Thomas the Apostle that had a 4-year jazz ministry from 67 to 71. And there's two composers, Mary Lou Williams, who wrote pieces for that second community in Harlem, as well as a composer who's not as well known named Eddie Bonnemere. And Eddie Bonnemere wrote for both of those churches, a Catholic parish and a Lutheran parish, and had a lot of success in having his music done by many different churches in the Northeast and doing things at national sacred music conferences. So one thing that Eddie Bonnemere did, and I'm happy to show you these props afterwards, was he was someone who didn't wait for other people to publish him. It's kind of similarly with Mary Lou Williams. He would create these spiral-bound notebooks with this very simple graphic on the front that he would reuse for a lot of his different sacred music pieces, and he would group them together and then call them a festival of something. So this one is Festival of Music. And then he would program these and sort of like sell these to camps that would have like church youth camps and, you know, conferences and different things. So he really got his music kind of this wide, you know, berth of people. And there's, anytime I mention Eddie Bonnemere to people who have heard of him at all, they say, oh, didn't he do that song that goes, help me Jesus? I said, yeah, so that's the tune I'm gonna do for you now. And in fact, I learned that Eddie Bonnemere did not play piano. He was a pianist, but he didn't play piano at many of the churches where he did his music. He had another pianist who was someone who lived in my old apartment building in New York named Ira Shankman, played piano, but he would come over and boot Ira off the piano bench when it came time to solo. So, yes, I've learned a lot of interesting things about this person. So what I'm going to do is sort of similar in Eddie Bonnemere fashion, and I have the music here, which I don't really need it, but I'll pull it out anyway. I'm going to invite you to join me in singing this. As you feel like you know the melody and you want to sing, you certainly don't have to. But the words are kind of very reflective of Eddie Bonnemere's ecumenical outlook. He wrote this in 1968. It was part of a larger mass he wrote for St. Peter's for that Lutheran parish called Missa, Laetare. And the lyrics say, help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. He doesn't care about the color of your skin or the religion you've been in. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. So I'll let you know when you can join me. You'll hear it a few times. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. He doesn't care about the color of your skin or what religion you've been in. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. Can we see if we can try it? Help me, Jesus, to love my myself. Then we sing it again. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. He doesn't care about the color of your skin, or what religion you've been, or what religion you've been in. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. Let's try it one last time. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. He doesn't care about the color of your skin or what religion you've been in. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. Help me, Jesus, to love my neighbor as myself. So I really learned it's really interesting from looking at these two different composers, Eddie Bonnemere and Mary Lou Williams, who at one point in one single year, they both worked at this same African American Catholic church in Harlem, that they really presented their music very differently. So I haven't seen video, but I've read lots of descriptions and realized that Eddie Bonnemere, who is actually the music director for this jazz service, he was the one out front who was getting everybody to sing, even during Mary Lou Williams's mass. And then, of course, you know, my friend Ira was playing the piano when Eddie was out there, except for the solos, according to Ira. Ira told me he got a little bit upset about that, but, you know, they were good friends. So about 2 years ago, I got to work with my friend Cynthia Powell, who's a great choral conductor in New York, and she directs the Stonewall Chorale there, and I partnered with them, and we did a U.S. concert premiere of Mary Lou's 1968 Mass called Mass for the Lenten Season. Now, I say this was a concert premiere because it had been done in churches, at this church in Harlem, and Aaron Deal had done it 1 year at another church in Harlem. And it was done in Rome in a concert setting, but it had never been done in concert in New York. So we did a lot of work to kind of expand the scores, looking at the archives and things, to do it in a whole concert form. But what I'm going to do for you now is two selections from that Lenten Mass that Mary Lou Williams wrote. And you'll hear her music, again, we're just getting a smattering, but her style is very different than Eddie Bonnemere's. So this first one is called Clean My Heart. It was used as an entrance piece. It's a setting of Psalm 51. And then I'm going to go into another psalm setting she did of Psalm 27. Truth is what you love in a man's heart. In the secret of my heart, teach me wisdom. Do not drive me out of your sight. Do not take from me your Holy Spirit. Clean my heart, O Lord. Make make it over. Give me a new spirit, a strong spirit. Rescue me, O God, my helper, and my tongue will sing about your goodness. Open up my lips and free me, and my mouth shall declare your praise. Clean my heart, O Lord. Make it over. Give me a new spirit, a strong spirit. And that's the first psalm. And the second one is Psalm 27, The Lord is my light. And you'll notice it's very similar in tone to that first one. Though an army encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I trust. The Lord is my light and my helper. Why should I be afraid? Do not leave me all alone, Lord. Oh my God, be my helper. Though father and mother abandon me, the Lord will receive me. The Lord is my light and my helper. Why should I be afraid? I am sure that I will see the Lord's goodness in the land of the living. Hope in Him, take hold and take heart. Hope in the Lord. The Lord is my light and my helper. Why should I be afraid? So I thought that by way of comparison, I would play for you my setting of the same psalm. And it sounds very, very different than that one. So this is the setting of Psalm 27, but it's different verses, except the refrain, the Lord is my light and my salvation, is almost the same. So this is my setting of the Lord is my light. The Lord is my light and my salvation, of whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? One thing I ask of the Lord, one thing I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, to see God in God's temple, to see God in the temple, to see God in the temple. The Lord is my light, my salvation, in whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? Hide not your face from me. Hide me in the hidden sanctuary. Forsake me not, O God. Even now my head is lifted up, and I will offer sacrifices of thanksgiving. I will sing and make music to God. I will sing and make music to God. The Lord is my light, my salvation, in whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? So I first did that piece, I'm pretty sure, at St. Peter's Lutheran, at this other church where Eddie Bonnemere wrote a lot of music for about 20 years. And you can probably hear in there, you know, if you all had words, I would invite you to sing with me, because there's refrains, and then there was the improvised part for the soloist singing the verses. So I'm going to switch tracks a little now and do an instrumental piece from what is considered to be Mary Lou Williams's first quote-unquote religious jazz recording that she did in 1963, called Mary Lou Williams Presents Black Christ of the Andes. And on this record, she did her choral piece called St. Martin de Porres, or Black Christ of the Andes, as she also named it. St. Martin de Porres was the first person of color to be canonized in the Catholic Church in 1962, and she presented that piece first, actually not with a choir, just with a soloist at St. Francis Xavier Church in New York on his first feast day in November of 1962. The interesting thing, I think I'm about probably, I don't know if there's anybody else in the world who knows this, so I'll share this with you. That piece has really become more and more known in probably the last 10, 15 years as being Mary Lou's choral masterpiece. It's super difficult to sing. It's like she transferred her writing for the big band to a choir, and the harmonies are very tight, so like the sopranos will be split, you know, each part will be split 3 ways in this very close harmony, which is really challenging even for professional choirs to do. But what I doubt almost anyone knows is I found a radio transcript or recording from 1969 when she brought in what must have been an alternate track, or alternate take, excuse me, of this piece from this record, and there's bass and drums and piano on it. So it gets talked about as this big a cappella choral masterpiece, which it is, but I don't know if that was a rehearsal track or what, because I don't think they did multi-tracking then. But anyway, you should check out that piece called Black Christ of the Andes that's on this record. On that same record, she did several trio pieces that aren't necessarily religious in nature, but this one I really think is. It's called Dirge Blues, and she wrote it right after John F. Kennedy was assassinated and dedicated it to him. So this is Mary Lou's Dirge Blues from 1963. So I'm going to return to Eddie Bonnemere now and show my prop here. So another thing that's a really interesting thread that I look forward to continuing to explore is with these two composers is the role of whether or not publishers, or say like Catholic music publishers or church music publishers, publish their music. And this is always, it's always an issue with musicians. When do you self-publish? When do you accept the deal of making 10% on your compositions that someone else now owns the copyright to? If you do decide to publish, because that's the standard. And it's something I've had to make decisions about myself. And in Eddie Bonnemere's case, he was really, really active in trying to get his music published by others, but of course he didn't wait, and he self-published himself. And the interesting thing is, I did all these things. I literally have gone through hymnals that did not have indexes of the composers in the back and gone through every page to count how many times these people were included. But in the sacristy, right before I came out, I saw that you had a copy of With One Voice, which is a Lutheran hymnal supplement. And I know that Eddie Bonnemere has at least one piece in here, so I found it. It's number 707. This is a piece that it's called "This Is My Body." It's a communion piece he did from a 1968 Mass called "Mary, Cause of Our Joy." And he had about, I think this, and this is a supplement, mind you, this isn't the main Lutheran hymnal like the Episcopal hymnal 82 that's in front of you in your pews. He had one piece published in a regular Lutheran hymnal, and then he has several pieces in the first African-American Catholic hymnal called "Lead Me, Guide Me" from 1987. But this next piece is something that a choral version was published by the same Lutheran publisher, Augsburg Fortress, which was then just Fortress Press. And the interesting thing I found out about this piece, and again, he kind of did it on his own before it got published. He wrote this in 1979 with someone who I still haven't figured out, I haven't found any info on her yet, named Patricia Edwards. It's called "Suffer the Little Children." And this piece was mentioned in a report on a citywide prayer vigil that was held in, I believe, March of 1981, when there was this kind of very horrific slew of killings of mostly African-American children in Atlanta. And so there were all these prayer vigils and marches around the country, and Mayor Ed Koch had Eddie Bonnemere come and do this song with one of the choirs he worked with, and then offered him a choral commission on behalf of the city to write a piece the following year. And it was mentioned in this one article I read that this was a piece that it's, once you hear it, you'll see it was very obviously why it was the right choice for this moment. So it's called "Suffer the Little Children." Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. They brought him their babies, their girls and their boys. They hoped that he'd touch them and pray, laid his hands on their heads to touch them, and oh, his disciples just turned them away. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. The disciples rebuked them, asked them to go. Said their master was busy that day. Said they ought not to ask him to waste precious time. But everyone heard Jesus say, suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. They thought he should hang out with scholars and such, or with folks who had some kind of clout. But he picked up a baby, hugged it and said, this child, what's the kingdom's about? Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom, such is the kingdom, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Such is the kingdom, for such is the kingdom of heaven. So going back to Mary Lou's Lenten Mass, so one really interesting thing between these two composers is thinking about where each of them was when Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th of 1968. And Eddie Bonnemere was actually, I just found this out, he was at Carnegie Hall performing as part of, so Duke Ellington was scheduled to do his second sacred concert, a concert at Carnegie Hall on that night, on April 4th. And right before the concert started, Bob Moses from SNCC announced on the stage that Martin Luther King had been shot. And so the whole tone of the concert changed to being a service that was mourning. And Eddie Bonnemere actually talked about this concert in some other article, and I realized that he was also performing on the concert, so I went and I looked up the notes of the Carnegie Hall website, and I saw he did some of his pieces that night. There were several other composers besides Duke Ellington, kind of right before Ellington did his sacred concert, which is a much longer work. It's a suite, basically. Eddie Bonnemere did a couple concerts. Mary Lou Williams, I don't know where she was on that actual night, but I do know that within the next 3 days, she composed these two next pieces that I'm going to do for you, that she had done on her very last Sunday at this church in Harlem at St. Thomas the Apostle with the youth choir. And I think it's important to recognize that the choir that these composers had, they weren't just made up of one ethnicity. There were people from many different backgrounds in this choir, and so hearing some of the words and just kind of thinking about the actual moment, I think is just something to point out. So I'm going to do these two pieces back to back. The first one is taken from Mary Lou paraphrased some of King's words from a speech he gave in February of 1968, which has become known as the drum major instinct. And he borrowed some of this from a Methodist pastor, this idea that we can't let our egos, like wanting to be the drum major in the front of the band, be the way that we act. And at the close of this homily that he gave, he talked about his own funeral. And he basically said, if you're around when I meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And then tell them I tried to love somebody, I tried to do all these different things. And Mary Lou actually paraphrases that and writes this piece for the choir at St. Thomas. The second piece I'm going to go straight into is a setting that she also did in those 2 days or 3 days. And it's a part of King's speech at the March on Washington in 1963 called I Have a Dream. And frankly, I don't know why this piece isn't done every single year by tons of choirs. But so I'm going to do those two pieces. So Tell Him Not to Talk Too Long and I Have a Dream, which she later, when she did her Lenten Mass in Rome, she kind of retitled the Mass as being a memorial Mass for Dr. King, and she used these pieces in the work. If you're around when I meet my day, don't want a long funeral. And if somebody delivers the eulogy, tell him not to talk too long. Just say, I tried to feed the hungry, tried to love somebody. If you're around when I meet my day, tell him not to talk too long. Put my casket on an old wagon drawn by 2 strong mules. Bury me in my hometown, Atlanta, Georgia. Tell him not to talk too long. Tell him not to talk too long. Tell him not to talk too long. I have a dream, yes, a dream. Listen, O Lord, to my prayer, my people shall be free. Here will be love from north to south. Let mountains roll, let freedom sing. We shall be free. I have a dream. have a dream. Yes, a dream. Listen, O Lord, to my plea. My people shall be free. Here will be love from north to south. Let mountain top, let freedom ring. We shall be free. We shall be free. I have a dream. I have a dream. I have a dream. Thank you. So I'm going to close with one last piece that's not on the program. But before I do, I want to thank Anne for inviting me, Anne Witkowski, for having me back. So can we give Anne a round of applause? And also for Ben, who's been here just 2 months, so I think we should give him a round of applause. As music director. And I would be happy to meet all of you in the back or the front, however you think of it, basically back there. Afterwards, I do have my Mary Lou Williams book here for sale, as well as a few CDs, including Force of Nature, which is my most recent record that's all Mary Lou Williams music. If you're interested in knowing more about Mary Lou Williams and not just about her religious music, though there will be a whole class on that, starting next Wednesday the 7th at 7 p.m. I'll be teaching a weekly course for 6 weeks for Jazz at Lincoln Center online as part of, they call it Swing U for Swing University. And they're basically adult education classes. They're only $15 a class, or it's even cheaper if you sign up for the whole thing, but you can sign up for whatever week you want. And when you do that, the classes are archived for 7 days. So I've had a lot of people ask me and say, I'm not free at that time, but you still have a whole week. And then as part of that, there will also be handouts that you can download that will have playlists for every class to hear online. So if you're interested in that, my website, deannajazz.com, has info on a link where you can sign up. But this last piece is one of, my original music, and I like to close with this piece a lot. So about 6 years ago, maybe, I was asked to bring my trio from New York, when I was living in New York, to a little Presbyterian church in eastern South Carolina, and they also had, they sponsored a choir of fourth and fifth graders, and it was mostly girls, and their director said, oh, I know you do a lot of arranging hymns, and would you consider doing an arrangement of His Eye is on the Sparrow? And my first thought was, I think there's like 268 arrangements of that. And I don't really want, I hate to say it, but it's never been my favorite song. And so, and I thought, well, let me see. I also like to do things where I take hymn text or just take the text and write new music, try to get inside of the text in some different way. So that's what I did, and for this next piece, and you can actually see this on YouTube too, or at my website. It's great to watch because there's a little girl in front who just doesn't stop dancing through the whole thing. But I found, to me, the main point of the text, at least when I was setting it, was the refrain that says, I sing because I am happy, and I sing because I am free. And sometimes I will play and sing this song in my house, even when I don't feel either of those things. And it helps me to at least have some experience of that. So that's partially due to the words that were penned by Sevilla Martin. So this is His Eye is on the Sparrow. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. Let not your heart be troubled. His tender word I hear, and resting on His goodness, I lose my doubt and fear. Though by the path He leadeth, yet one step I may see. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. I sing because I am happy, and I sing because I am free. For His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow. Whenever I am tempted, whenever clouds arise, when songs give place to sighing, when hope within me dies, I draw the closer to Him, from care He sets me free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. I sing